In the beginning, there was the Aether and the Keepers. The Aether is all of creation itself. The multiverse, the planets, everything that had been created and will be is inside of the Aether. With the Aether came the existence of the Dark Aether, a dark mirror dimension of sorts, with its own societies, creatures, and power that exist outside of the Aether. If the Aether is creation, the Dark Aether is destruction. The Keepers were the first known beings to have ever existed, and at some point the Keepers discovered the Dark Aether, and in its discovery, some of the Keepers wanted to venture into the Dark Aether, and they were being led by a Keeper named the Shadow Man. Dr. Monty, the leader of the Keepers and best friend of the Shadow Man, had warned against going into the Dark Aether, but they didn't listen. The Keepers who ventured into the Dark Aether became corrupted by the Dark Aether, and as a result, over time, evolved into a new species known as the Apothicans. Now that that's out of the way, it's time to talk about the subject of this video, the Summoning Key. The Summoning Key is the oldest known artifact in existence, and its origins as to how it exists in the first place are that it was crafted by the Keepers. More specifically, it seems it was crafted by the first Keeper to ever exist, known only as the First One. The First One used the Summoning Key to spread life throughout the Aether, thus populating each and every dimension in known universe with intelligent life. This is where humans, obviously, come from in the grand scheme of things. The Summoning Key was also used to even create the various dimensions in the first place, each with their own unique aspects that make them different from the rest. The Keepers also used the Summoning Key to create Agartha, which is a perfect dimension that exists outside of the Aether and the Dark Aether. Agartha is the home of the Keepers, and it would be the place that the Keepers who left to venture into the Dark Aether would originally reside. The Summoning Key is a very important artifact to the Keepers, as well as the Apothicans, as they were once Keepers themselves. The actual name for the Summoning Key is pronounced in the Apothican language as Astoth Arbzarark. Along with being the oldest known artifact in all of existence, it is also the most powerful artifact to have ever been. Let's skip forward a bit into the future, shall we? In the 63rd dimension of the Aether, there was a city, Morg City. It was within this city that the Summoning Key would resurface after millennia of not being seen. A reporter had acquired the Summoning Key under the orders of his employer, Tony Hale Rapt, Mr. Rapt. Mr. Rapt had instructed the reporter to deliver the Summoning Key to him on Easy Street in Morg City, but the reporter never made it to the delivery. A man named Edward Richtofen, known to the players as the premise version of Richtofen, appeared within Morg City. He attempted to secure the Summoning Key for himself, however, this also did not occur. Whenever Richtofen attempted to get the Summoning Key from the hands of the reporter started to become inaudible and seemingly spoke gibberish and waved what appeared to be a letter from Dr. Monty. The Summoning Key then proceeded to be locked within a box using some form of magic and sealed up. The reporter attempted to attack Richtofen, but Richtofen, defending himself, killed the reporter. It's also worth noting that Mr. Rapt, Tony Hale Rapt, was actually the Shadow Man, convincing the reporter to do his bidding. Sometime after this, the Shadow Man placed a curse on 4 individual people within Morg City. These 4 people all had something in their past that they wouldn't want revealed to the public. Because of this, the Shadow Man was able to use their past to manipulate them into getting him the Summoning Key. They were Nero Blackstone, a magician, Jessica Rose, a dancer, Jack Vincent, a police officer, and lastly Floyd Campbell, a boxer. Being granted the Mark of the Beast, or Shuboth, as it's pronounced in the Apothican language, the 4 people gained the ability to temporarily morph into the Beast after activating the curse using a purple flame. See, the Mark of the Beast was a curse placed on them by the Shadow Man. This allowed them to have the power to temporarily destroy the magical seal around the box containing the Summoning Key. After acquiring Astoth Arbzarark, they then followed the instructions provided to them by the Shadow Man and performed multiple sacrificial rituals. With each ritual and each sacrifice, the soul of the one being sacrificed would be contained within the Summoning Key. The 4 realized they were being manipulated by the Shadow Man and that he may not be a good guy. They proceeded to work with the Keepers to perform another ritual and trap the Shadow Man within the Summoning Key. They managed to pull this off and proceeded to give the Summoning Key back to the Keepers, as it would be safer in their hands. The Keeper was going to use the Summoning Key to destroy the cursed mark. This, however, did not last long, as Richtofen appeared out of a portal in Morg City once again and grabbed the Summoning Key out of the hand of the Keeper holding it. He then left back through the portal, dooming the 4 people who now would forever bear the cursed Mark of the Beast. Richtofen then took the Summoning Key to another dimension, traveling to dimension 2210 to kill and acquire the soul of an innocent version of himself. He then used the Summoning Key to deliver the soul to Agartha to live in the house with Samantha Maxis, her father Ludwig Maxis, and the leader of the Keepers himself, Dr. Monty. I will save the backstory of Samantha Maxis and Ludwig Maxis for another day and another video, but just know they are a very important role in the story. Richtofen wants to save the souls of the other members of what I referred to earlier, Premise. These characters are Tank Dempsey, Takeo Masaki, and Nikolai Belinsky. Again, we will cover this in another video on another day, but for the sake of this story, there is another version of these characters in one of the dimensions that goes by the name of Ultimus. Same characters, different dimension. He reunites with the other members of Premise at the Doris facility, which is a Group 935 research facility from World War II in another dimension. For a brief explanation, Group 935 was a group of scientists dedicated to researching Element 115. Element 115 is an element sent to multiple dimensions by the Apothicons that corrupts humans and turns them into zombies. Richtofen worked for Group 935, and it was led by Dr. Ludwig Maxis. While reuniting with the other members of Premise in this dimension, he runs into that universe's version of himself and kills him. Then they travel as a group to Der Eisendrache, which is German for the Iron Dragon. It is a castle set in Austria that was repurposed by Group 935 as a research facility, and the castle itself is named Griffin Castle and is also known as Eagle's Nest. They traveled to Der Eisendrache in this universe to kill the version of Tank Dempsey, who had been captured as a test subject and transferred to the castle, so that they can acquire his soul and the summoning key. Premise leaves the Der Eisendrache facility and travels to an island in Japan named Zetsubo no Shima, where this universe's version of Takeo is being held prisoner by the Japanese army under the orders of the Emperor. During this time, the summoning key temporarily falls into the hands of a Japanese officer after they were arrested, but the ship gets hit by a wave, Premise Takeo kills him, and it almost rolls off the deck before Premise ultimately grabs it. So it's not really too relevant, but it did get taken from them for a short period. Regardless, they take the soul of the prisoner version of Takeo and head to another dimension to get Nikolai's soul from that dimension as well. They travel to the Battle of Stalingrad, where in this universe, Nikolai fights dragons in a mech suit. Yeah, Garad Kurovi was weird, okay? Mech-wielding Nikolai eventually gets taken down, but not without a fight. They capture his soul within the summoning key as well, then they proceed to send the summoning key and themselves to Agartha, where the souls of all of the versions of themselves that they captured are to live as children with Samantha Maxis and the other version of Richtofen that we had mentioned earlier. This, however, would be thwarted, as Ludwig Maxis didn't have a soul yet, because Dr. Monty forgot to give him one. Good job, Dr. Monty. Not having a soul allowed him to be easily corrupted by the voice of the Shadow Man, who was calling out from the summoning key begging to be freed. Maxis frees the Shadow Man from the summoning key, and the Shadow Man destroys the house as well as Agartha as a whole, allowing the Apothicons to enter Agartha, and sparking an all-out attack on the home of the Keepers. Premise, however, were also in Agartha, as I mentioned before, and despite impossible odds, they managed to defeat the Shadow Man, saving Agartha. However, while Dr. Monty is pleased to see Agartha saved, he is not happy with the Premise crew, as they shouldn't even be there anymore. You see, all of the dimensions they've been traveling to have been getting destroyed after they leave. This was Dr. Monty's plan. This includes the dimensions that the Premise characters are from. So now that everything is gone, why are they still here? Well, Premise Richtofen knew that they would eventually no longer exist, and while gathering the other versions of their souls to preserve them, he was also planning for the Premise members' survival as well. Richtofen had managed to convince Victus, a group of completely different characters from the Ultimus timeline, to acquire an ancient book by the name of the Chronorium for him before he started this journey. The Chronorium tells the reader every major event that has happened and will happen. It is literally history being written as it happens. It knows all past, present, and future outcomes. Upon reading the Chronorium, he learned of the fate of himself and the rest of the Premise members, and decided to save their lives. To ensure their survival, Richtofen acquired blood from people in the dimensions that were destroyed, and had himself and the remaining Premise characters drink them. This caused a paradox, where after the dimensions had been destroyed, a part of them lived on within the Premise crew. Dr. Monty was not happy with this, and punished the Premise crew by sending them back to the Great War, causing a multiversal time loop, where the Premise characters will forever begin and end their journey in the Great War. That was until Mob of the Dead, in a pocket dimension where 4 mobsters were stuck in a loop of not escaping prison, and killing Al Arlington for being the reason they couldn't escape. Eventually, however, Al kills the other mobsters instead, and breaks the loop. This doesn't just break the loop in their pocket dimension, however. This broke the loop for the entire multiverse, causing the Chronorium to change. Now, let's rewind a bit, to when Richtofen was acquiring the blood vials. While he's there, this time, himself and the rest of Premise all get caught in a loop in the prison, no longer able to teleport out. He ends up freeing the mobster souls from purgatory while there, and he sacrifices himself to break the cycle at the prison. This causes a version of Richtofen, who had already been through the loop and went to the Great War, to wake up in a cryopod he was being held in by Richtofen in the prison. Upon sacrificing himself, the post-Great War version of Richtofen gives the Chronorium to Premise Nikolai, and tells him he is the key to breaking the cycle. Maxis, up in Agartha, sends his daughter Samantha Maxis, as well as child Richtofen aka Eddie, to meet up with Premise through a teleporter. Aether. Premise gets help from the Victus crew in their dimension and acquires the Agarthan device, which is a device that can be used to destroy the summoning key and end the multiverse. Premise then finds the Ultimus crew and teams up with them to pull it off. Premise Nikolai, reading the Chronorium, knows that this will only work if Ultimus and Premise are dead, as they were the ones who caused the paradox in the first place. Premise Nikolai kills Premise and Ultimus before using the Agarthan device and destroying the summoning key. As this happens, he has Samantha Maxis shoot him in the head, killing him. This is the end of not only the Aether story as a whole, but the summoning key. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video about the history of the summoning key, and if you did, consider subscribing. And if I missed anything important to the summoning key or got something wrong, feel free to correct me in the comments. In a civil way, please. I'm only human. I will see you guys in the next video, in the next stream, and in the next map. Peace out.